Om Namah Shivaya.
Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Namah Shivaya.
Om Tat Sat. Om Namah Shivaya. Good evening, everybody.
Om Tat Namah Shivaya. Good evening, Acharya.
Okay, so we will continue with Dṛg-Dṛśya-Viveka, and we are on the 19th verse, right? So we will chant. Atrapyavrittinashena
Atrapyavrittinashena
vibhati brahma sargayoho
Bhati Brahma Sargayoho
vedastayor vikarah syat
Vedasyasyat
sargena brahmani kvachit
Dṛg-Dṛśya Brahmani Kvachit.
Okay, so I'm just muting all of y'all. And Alkaji, can you mute yourself, please? Yeah, thank you. All right. So we said last time that the problem with Atma Anatma Aviveka is that it finds its expression in a sense of insecurity, and this sense of insecurity becomes the cause for all my actions, which is in the form of seeking security from this changing world. And that is the problem, because from the changing world, how can one ever have a sense of security, which requires an unchanging aspect? So is the problem with Viveka Shakti is a question which one has to answer. The problem cannot be with Viveka Shakti, so Vikshepa Shakti, not Viveka Shakti. The problem is not Vikshepa Shakti, because this Vikshepa Shakti is the reason why you have a body, which I have a body. And this body is the reason why I'm able to do transaction in this world. So two aspects of Maya, one is Vikshepa and one is Avarna. So Vikshepa is the reason why this world and my bodies exist. And therefore the problem cannot be with Vikshepa Shakti. But the problem is with the Avarna Shakti. So what is a Jivan Mukta? The Jivan Mukta is the one who has removed Avarna Shakti. But he is not in a position to remove Vikshepa Shakti. Because should he be able to remove Vikshepa Shakti, then the world itself will not be there anymore. So a Jivan Mukta is the one who is mastered and removed the Avarna, removed the covering, the Ajnana. And this Avarna Shakti can be removed in what manner? Only through Shravanam, Mananam and Nididhyasana. And Shravanam, Mananam, Nididhyasanam is what? It is Jnana Yoga. To come to Jnana Yoga, I must have Jnana Yogyata, the eligibility to come for Jnana, which is otherwise called Sadhana Chatushtayam. And this requires Viveka, discrimination. And this Viveka has to be implemented at two levels. One is at the level of the individual, the Jiva. And that Vivek Shakti is implemented by way of understanding the difference between the Ahankara and the Sakshi. The difference between the consciousness and the inanimate body-mind complex. And we call this Atma, Anatma, Vivekaha. And we saw this in the 17th verse of this particular text. And of course, we have seen it in Bhagavad Gita also. So, this inquiry into the difference between Atma and Atma, it can also be called the Tvam Pada Viveka. Inquiry into the Tvam Pada. Tvam Pada means what? We have a Mahavakya called Tat Tvam Asi, which consists of three padas, three words, Tat, Tvam, and Asi. So Tvam is the Jiva, and therefore an inquiry into Atma, Anatma, Viveka, or trying to understand the difference between the Sakshi and the Ahankara, is called Tvam Pada inquiry or Tvam Pada Viveka. So that is the first level. So the first inquiry which I go into is to understand that I am different from the body. I am the Sakshi and I am different from the body. So this is at the level of the Jiva, at the individual level, at the microcosm level. And this is Tvam Pada Viveka. Then you have to extend this to the level of Brahman. And if the consciousness in me, the Jiva, is called Atma, that same consciousness looked at from the universal level, from the Samashti level, is called Brahman, is the Vastu. And the body is called Prapancha, which is the universe itself. Is there a different method? No. Method is the same. It is Shravanam, Mananam, and Nididhyasanam, otherwise called Jnana Yogyata. And what you are trying to achieve is the same. A differentiation between the consciousness and the matter part of it. So at the Jiva level, the individual level, I understand that I am Sakshi and the body is Ahankara. And then this verse now talks about the same inquiry, but at the level of Samashti. So if the inquiry at the level of Vyashti, that is the individual Jiva, is called Tvam Pada Viveka, that same inquiry at the level of the Samashti now is called what? Tat Pada Viveka. So Tvam is the Jiva, Tvat or Tat is Ishvara. So first there is an inquiry into what the Jiva is, and thereafter there is an inquiry into what Ishvara is. And therefore he says in this verse, Atrapi avrati nashayana. So atra api. Atra here refers to what? Sarga, creation. Avarati is the avarna shakti, which means ajnanam, and nasha means a destruction. So he says atra api with reference to creation also. Atra api also with reference to creation. Avrati nashena, one has to destroy the avarna shakti. The ignorance one has to destroy. And after that is done, what will happen? Brahma sargayoho vibhati. Brahma sargayoho vibhati. The literally meaning, Brahma is Brahman, Sarga is creation, Vibhati becomes clear. And to make this sentence make sense, we have to supply Bhedaha, difference. So Brahma Sargayoho Bheda Vibhati. Vibhati means becomes visible or becomes clear, becomes shining. Bhedaha is the difference. And he says, after the Atra Api Avrati Rashena, after destruction of the ignorance of the Avarna Shakti, Brahma Sargayoho Bheda Vibhati. The difference between Brahma and Sarga becomes clear. Sarga means creation. Brahma means Brahman. So only after Avarna Shakti is destroyed, we will begin to appreciate the difference between Brahman and Sarga. And how am I supposed to understand this difference? I have to understand that Brahman is existence principle. Name and form is Sarga. Sarga means creation. So there is an existence principle, there is a Vastu, the very substance itself, that is called Brahman. Any name and form associated with that Vastu, that becomes creation. And this difference, if I have to understand, Avrati Nashena, that Avarna Shakti, the hold that Avarna Shakti has on me, that has to be loosened, that has to be destroyed. So Bhati means, understanding this concept, Bhati literally means to shine. Vibhati means clearly shine. But Bhati here has to be taken in the context of the verse itself, and it means understand, shines in the buddhi. So the difference begins to shine in the buddhi, means the difference is clearly vibhati, clearly understood in the buddhi. Therefore, Brahma sargayoho bhedaha vibhati. The difference between Brahman and the creation, that becomes clear. And if it becomes clear, what becomes clear? So he continues, Tayoho madhye, between those two. Which two? Brahma sargayoho. So Brahma sargayoho madhye. Tayoho here refers to those two. And therefore you can complete that sentence by replacing Tayoho with Brahma sargayoho. Therefore, Tayoho madhye is equal to Brahma sargayoho madhye. Between these two, between Brahman and Sargaha, between Brahman and creation, what is there? Vikaraha sarge. All changes. Vikaraha means changes. Vikaraha sarge. You have to supply belongs. All changes belong to sarge, belong to the anatma, belong to the world, while Brahmani kvachit nasti. In Brahman, kvachit ever na asti. What is not asti? What does not exist in Brahman? Here again, you have to expand the sentence to make sense. Brahmani kvachit vikaraha na asti. In Brahman, there never is any change at all. So this is the understanding that once this Avarna Shakti is destroyed, the difference between Brahman and Sarga becomes clear. And what is the difference? The difference is that all changes belong to this universe, to Sarga, while in Brahman, changes do not exist at all. Okay, so that is the 19th verse, and we'll chant the 20th one also. So please unmute yourself and we'll chant verse number 20 also. Asti bhati priyam rupam
अस्ति भाति प्रियं रूपम्
नाम च इति अंश पंचकम्
नाम च इति अंश पंचकम्
आद्यत्रयं ब्रह्म रूपम्
आद्यत्रयं ब्रह्म रूपम्
जगद्रूपं ततो द्वयम्
जगद्रूपं ततो द्वयम्.
So very famous, very beautiful little verse, which gives you in one line whatever has been said before. So asti, asti, bhati, priyam, rupam, nama cha iti panchakam. Nama cha iti amsha panchakam. So asti means what is. The isness. Whenever you say there is something, there is a pen, there is a mouse, there is a glass. The isness refers to the existence principle itself. So asti, isness. Any word which you say, which you can use, which refers to the existence of something, that is all the existence principle itself. Because one can never experience anything if it does not exist. And therefore, whatever I experience, it exists. So we discussed this, if you remember, in the Shankaracharya Bhashyam on verse number 16 of chapter 2. We had a long discussion on existence principle, spread over almost 5 classes. All that you have to recall now. So, existence principle is called what? Sat. And every experience that I have, what is common? Sat is common. Without the existence principle, no experience can ever be had. So, asti, that is the isness of anything, the in bracket isness of anything, is called asti over here. And when something exists, then what? Bhati. So, bhati means shines, becomes known to me. So, I can say that something is known to me only, number one, when it exists, and number two, when I'm aware of it. So I can never be aware of something which does not exist. And therefore, existence and consciousness. We are talking about two things, Sat and Chit. Asti refers to Sat, Bhati refers to Chit, consciousness. So the moment I say this glass is, I'm saying two things. The glass exists and the glass is known to me. And therefore, Sat is Chit and Chit is Sat. The two always go together. Existence and consciousness always go together. Because you cannot be conscious of something which does not exist. And unless you exist, you cannot be conscious anyway. Right? So Sat and Chit are not two different aspects. They are the same aspect of the same Brahman, the consciousness existence principle. So Asti and Bhati and Priyam. So Priyam means something which I hold, which I like, right? So everything is associated with me as an object of my liking or an object of somebody else's liking. So Priyam, that is what he's saying here. And if you go by what we have said, Asti is Sat and Bhati is Chit, then Priyam has to be what is left over of the definition of Brahman, which is Ananda. So Asti, Bhati, Priyam has to be taken as Sat, Chit and Ananda. What else is left? Nama, Rupam, Iti, Amsha, Panchakam. So Asti, Bhati, Priyam, Rupam. Asti, Bhati, Priyam, number 3 of them. Then Nama and Rupam, name and form. Iti, Amsha, Panchakam. These are the 5 parts. Amshaha, 5 parts. That's what it means. Asti, Bhati, Priyam, Nama, Rupam. These are 5 parts. So the first line of this verse is Asti, Bhati, Priyam, Rupam, Nama, Cha, Iti, Amsha, Panchakam. These 5 are the parts of what it is. It will come later. But these are the 5 parts. So Asti, Bhati, Priyam, Rupam, Nama, Iti, Amsha, Panchakam. These 5 are 5 parts. That's what the first line means. What are the 5 parts? Asti, Bhati, Priyam, Nama, Rupam. Which means Sat, Chit, Ananda, Nama, Rupam. And then he says, Adhyatrayam, the first 3. Which 3? Asti, Bhati, Priyam. Sat, Chit, Ananda. What is it? Brahma Rupa. They belong to Brahman, or they are the aspects of Brahman. Brahma Rupa. They are the form of Brahman. While Jagat Rupam Tato Dvayam. The other 2 belong to the Jagat. The first 3 belong to Brahman. The last 2 belong to Jagat, Mithya Prapanchaha. And what he is saying, the wise person, the Jnani, is one who knows this, that there are 5 aspects of everything that exists. Other than the first 3 aspects, Satchitananda, they belong to Brahman, the isness principle. The existence, consciousness, Ananda principle is Brahman. The last two are name and form of what? Of the first three. And that belongs to the Mithya Prapanchaha. So, Adhyatraya Brahma Rupam, Jagat Rupam, Tatho Dvayam. So, there is a Satyam Mithya mixture always at the subjective level, at the level of the individual, because the individual is the subject. Like you are the one who's experiencing the universe, and therefore you are the subject. Here he says that at your level also, at the Jiva level also, there is a mixture of Satyam and Mithya. And it is being pointed out that at the level of what you experience, the objective level, which is Srishti or the universe also, the same mixture exists. At your level, you call it Atma Anatma. At Samashti level, you call it Brahman and universe. So it is being pointed out that when you experience this universe, it cannot be purely Nama Rupa. It cannot be purely universe. Because universe is, in view of the definition given, Brahman plus Nama Rupa. Nama Rupam is Maya. So Brahman plus Maya is the universe, which is Ishvara, of course. So whenever you experience this universe, it cannot be pure universe. It cannot be pure Nama Rupam. It has to be mixed with Brahman. Right? So the usual example you give is that if I hold up my hand and I say, what are you seeing? You will normally say, I'm seeing your hand, or I'm seeing your fingers, or I'm seeing your wrist, or something like that. But you miss seeing the light because of which you are seeing the fingers. There are two things always when you see something, the object and the light, because of which you can see the object. However, we are so built that we look at the form, which is the object, and we miss the formless, which is the light. And the aim of the teacher here is to point out this particular omission and to point out that whenever there is an object, the object is there all right. The Nama Rupam is there all right. But never forget that there is also the sunlight because of which you can see the object. And that is why he says, Asti Bhati Priyam Rupam Nama Cha Iti Amsha Panchakam. These five amshas, these five parts will be present in any experience that you have. But Asti, Bhati and Priyam is formless. It is uniform. It exists all over the place. It's all pervading. And therefore, it is often overlooked. And whenever there is a movement, that movement only catches our attention. And that movement is what? It is Nama Rupam only. So while Nama Rupam catches my attention, the formless Asti, Bhati, Priyam, all pervading is normally not noticed. And this is what the teacher is pointing out, that when the Nama Rupa, which are distinct for any object, is noticed immediately, you should not overlook the Asti, Bhati, Priyam aspect also. The problem here is that Mithya is always attractive because Maya has the capacity to be beautiful, to attract by changing all the time. And therefore, it is all right to enjoy Maya, but enjoy Maya while holding on to Brahman. The tragedy is that Mithya is always attractive. Satyam is formless and therefore not attractive. It is often overlooked. So these are the five components. And of these, Adhyatrayam Brahma Rupaha. The first three belong to Brahman alone. Now the thing is, Sat and Chit, one can understand. But how do we say that Priyam, Ananda, is changeless and uniform? So if you have to understand that, you have to throw your mind back to the discussion on Ananda, which we've had on several occasions. We said they are in three forms: Priyam, Moda, and Pramoda. So the Priyam is the Ananda which exists in your mind as soon as you see something. Moda is a slightly higher form of the Ananda, which is when you acquire the object which you have seen. So Priyam is based on seeing, Moda is based on possession, and Pramoda is when you enjoy the object which you possess. So see, possess, and enjoy the object of possession. So Priyam, Moda, Pramoda. Obviously, Pramoda is the highest. Now the Ananda, whether it be Priyam, Moda, or Pramoda, remember that whenever it manifests in your mind, it is never uniform because it is based on the experience of some other object. So Ananda reflected in the mind is never uniform because it's a reflection. It has, and since the mind fluctuates all the time, the mind is a reflecting medium for Ananda, and the mind keeps on moving. And therefore, that Ananda also keeps on moving. So the mind is RM in this case, and the Ananda is the reflected Ananda, Pratibimba Ananda as it is called, because the mind is fluctuating, the Ananda also appears to fluctuate. But the original Atmananda, which is being reflected in the mind as Pratibimba Ananda, that is non-fluctuating, non-varying, changeless, and uniform. So here, when you say Priyam, he is not talking about Priyam, Moda, Pramoda. That Priyam has to be understood as the original Atma Ananda itself, the very happiness principles itself. And then he says Jagad Rupam Tatodvayam, the other two, which is what? Nama and Rupa. They belong to the universe, the Mithya world, which is constantly changing. So with this, we'll stop here. Any questions we can answer? It's a bit abstract, I know, but this is higher Vedanta, so it's got to be abstract.
Raviji, may I ask a question?
Yes, please.
See, when we were studying Tattvabodha, Ananda was explained to us as infinite, without limit. Now here Ananda is being treated as happiness principle.
Yes, and that happiness principle is infinite. So at least that Ananda is Ananta. Because of the Ananta aspect, what happens when it's Ananta? Ananta means there is nothing left to acquire. And the Ananta has to be understood as the contentment out of being infinite. So that's why we call it Ananta over there. Ananta Ananda is the same. Ananda arising out of lack of anything more to acquire. Okay, so you'll have a more detailed explanation of this when we come to Taittiriya Upanishad. It's a bit far away, but
So,
yes,
Raviji. So here we say ki Ananda manifested in the mind. That's just a reflected Ananda, depending. And
mind is a reflecting medium, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So it fluctuates because the mind is fluctuating all the time.
Correct.
Okay. But the Atmananda, that permanent Ananda, but it is a reflection of the Ananda.
The reflection of the permanent Ananda, which you cannot experience because to experience either Sat or Chit or Ananda, you need a reflecting medium.
Mm-hmm.
Anything experienced is not you. Why? Because you are the experiencer.
Okay. Very interesting.
So again and again, I'm driving home that same point. Anything that you experience cannot be you. whatever is experienced is non-Brahman. That is exactly what he's saying here. Tato dvayam. Nama Rupa is all that is experienced. And therefore Nama Rupa, Nama Rupa always is Jagad Rupam. Belongs to the experienced world. Is an object of experience. So these terms, Jagat has to be understood as whatever is experienced. And other three, Satchitananda, has to be understood as the existence, consciousness, and Ananda principle.
So these are the concepts Satchitananda when we cannot just experience. I know I cannot experience it. It is a prameya. So we just have to dig it into our mind. That's what we are.
That is what you are. That is the final, teaching of Vedanta, that this Adhyatrayam you are, and Tatodvayam also you are. The only difference is that while you are the world, while the world is you, you are not the world. That equation you need to understand, that I am Brahman and the world is Brahman, but Brahman is not the world.
Oh.
It's only a one-way equation. You cannot say Brahman is world, therefore world is Brahman. That is what Krishna meant in the 10th chapter, right? When he said that I hold the world, I support the world with a fraction of me. Which means what? The world is me, but I am definitely bigger than the world.
So in 9th chapter also he said that they exist in me, but I don't exist in them.
Yeah, all those things.
But they all don't exist in me too.
Yeah, all those things have to be understood as there is only a one-way equation. The necklace is gold, but gold is more than the necklace.
But then he says that they don't exist in me too.
There, that 9th chapter thing is completely different. He's talking about dependence. The world depends upon me, but I don't depend upon the world.
Okay.
Okay, so with this, we'll stop for today. Thank you for being here. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam Eva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat. Om Namah Shivaya. Thank you for joining.
Thank you, Acharya.
Thank you very much.